performance, build quality, and in recent times, attractiveness. Those are the traits often associated with acclaimed Japanese watchmaker Orient. Their most recent launch, the Orient Mako Sport, promised to be their sexiest to date, with a breathtaking dial that makes most affordable watches blush. But what if I told you that this stunning facade hides a flaw so unexpected that it's left me and many others completely baffled? Believe it or not, you're looking at that very mistake right now. Notice anything strange? Well, stick with me and we'll take a closer look together. It's only been a few weeks since I covered the extremely impressive Orient Mako 3. While the price increase wasn't appreciated, the new colours and design changes definitely were, helping to reinvigorate an older line that had fallen into the shadow of some popular newer releases. To that point, it was arguably the best looking Orient diver, certainly in competition with the Kamasu. But Orient wasn't done there. Yeah, literally days later, I received this in the mail. The newest member of the Orient Mako family, this time in a smaller 40mm case size. Thanks to TUS Watches for providing this review sample. You'll find it linked below as always. Now, Orient's naming scheme is diabolical. Instead of calling this the Enigma code written here, I'll do the honors and just call this the Orient Mako Sport. When you look at it, it just feels right, you know? Orient's press release infers this is perhaps the Orient Mako 40, but it's visually very different from the other Mako watches, so I'm unsure why they're trying to connect the two. In fact, let's begin with those differences. What first hit me was the sizing. I've always thought 40mm divers were too big for me, because that's usually been the case. But this model feels way smaller. With the calipers, it sits at 39.8mm in diameter, with a thickness of 12.9mm and a lug-to-lug of 46.4. Funnily, that last measurement is exactly the same as that on the recent Mako 3, but the lugs here are slimmer, and overall, it looks way smaller when side by side. Some of this sorcery is down to the bezel being narrower than the case width, at only 38mm, which combines with a much smaller dial to shrink the perceived proportions. As a result, the Mako Sport 40mm actually suits small and average-sized arms really well, but larger wrists may prefer something bigger. Additionally, the NATO-style strap adds considerable thickness to this otherwise compact timepiece, so that's begging to be changed out, for more reasons than one it turns out. While this new Mako Sport also comes in at a similar launch price of about £240 or around $300, the case here is sharper cut than the Mako 3, with a neater set of chamfers running the upper edges of the watch and a harsher brushed upper. The polished flanks are executed to the same standard though, and it comes with a similar rear securing the watch to 200 meters. It has some other diver standard features like a screw down crown and a unidirectional rotating bezel, though the latter feels quite different to the Mako 3. With a much firmer click and reduced backplay. Still, it doesn't have a loom pip in a similar manner to the Rolex Yachtmaster, suggesting that deep sea performance isn't a primary concern here. The minimalist look indicates that the Mako Sport is really designed to just look great on the wrist, and boy does it achieve it. Well, almost. Several versions of this watch are available, including the standard blue, black and white, as well as two more experimental colours, the salmon pink and my favourite, the purple version. Admittedly, Orient's product shots are a little deceiving, as only in very specific lighting conditions does the dial look as saturated as in the images. But boy, even this slightly lighter violet tone looks incredible for a budget watch. The strength of the sunburst here is mesmerising, and together with the deep and thick hour markers, it makes this watch look genuinely like a luxury watch. I've got to say, this is probably the best looking dial I've seen on any affordable watch in 4 years of running this channel, or at least it's up there. To the naked eye, the hands are super clean and unintrusive, while the low-key text and fonts don't distract from the minimal vibe. Even the date window at 3 o'clock slots in perfectly. It kinda looks like an Oyster Perpetual had a baby with a Yachtmaster, and it somehow produced something just as stylish as either. Obviously, this is no Rolex in terms of quality or super macro finishing, but still, from arm's length, this Mako Sport looks genuinely better than many of the four-figure watches you commonly see in jewelers' windows. Powering it is also a decent F6722 movement, which is solid outside of a somewhat noisy rotor. It even has a scratch-proof sapphire crystal rather than the mineral used by Seiko at this sort of price. I thought this would be a slam dunk. One of the few watches I can just say, yes, run out and go and buy this. Unfortunately, there's one perplexing thing holding this watch back, which I can't recall ever seeing on a watch before. No, it's not the horrendous strap. I've heard of distressed leather, but this poor thing, it looks traumatized by how poor quality it is. If this is calf leather, then I'm a prime rib. No, it's not that. It's not even the fact that you can get other watches with better specs for less money. Those two things I can easily look past given the sheer beauty of the Mako Sport. What I can't fathom is how this watch launched with this. You're looking at a watch with a completely botched minute track. Now, you've probably seen misaligned markers before, maybe even a misaligned chapter ring. These things are fairly common, they happen, especially with budget watches. However, I've never seen a minute track where the gap between the printed second markers has been totally messed up. If you look closely, you'll see the 26-second line is butted right up against the white 25 marker. Then there's an abnormally large gap between it and the 27-second mark. Opposite it, you'll also see something similar but to a lesser extent from 32 to 35 seconds. And like me at first, you're probably just thinking, oh well, it's some sort of printing error, I'll just return this for a replacement. You can try that, but it won't work. You see, Orient hasn't just messed up this watch, or even this batch of watches. From what I can tell, this bizarre flaw is present in every single production unit in their whole Mako Sport line. Those press release product shots I showed you at the start? Yeah, if you look closely, you'll see the same flawed marker spacing. And other video reviews? Well, you guessed it, the same problem again, even on other color variants of this watch. The ubiquity of this slip-up suggests a core design blunder rather than a manufacturing defect. Somehow, this misaligned version of the design slipped through the cracks and got final approval without anyone noticing, which for a huge vintage watchmaker is incredibly embarrassing. I've reviewed literally hundreds of watches. I've never seen an error quite like this. It's arguably the most simple part of the watch. It's just some printed lines. How do you mess this up? Admittedly, it's far from the most noticeable mistake I've encountered. My first Timex galley, for instance, had a faulty gouged out bezel release notch that was triple the proper size, which I had to return. The error on this Orient isn't so apparent unless you're really looking for it. Nevertheless, the Timex flaw was on an individual defective unit. The replacement they sent me had no such issue. Here, Orient has willingly applied their error to every Mako Sport watch that they've shipped to dealers, as far as I can tell. At this rate, they might have to start pulling a Scametti and claiming that this is not a fault, but a feature. A bit like coins with minting errors. Maybe these will be a high-value collector's item a few decades down the line. Jokes aside, I'm not sure what Orient is going to do in this situation. That was until I got the following update. According to TUS, Orient is now aware of this problem. The defective models will be suspended from sale until they've had their dials replaced with the corrected version. If you've bought this watch, just email the retailer and hopefully they can sort something for you. But maybe you want to keep one of these unique timepieces. Without this error, this watch would get a 8.0 in terms of value and a style score of 9.2. Visually, this is comfortably in the upper echelons of what you can get at this price. I'm just more frustrated by the missed opportunity for a killer watch on day one. To see the awful Timex flaw I mentioned earlier, check out the video on screen now. They shipped me a dodgy watch and then completely ignored my return requests. How kind.